Thank you very much for this opportunity. So today I'm going to talk in the next 15 minutes about perioperative antibiotics and strategies to decrease infections. Really have no disclosures. Perioperative antibiotics. Well, basically we're going to talk about three things: preoperative nasal cultures and decolonization against Staph aureus, customizing perioperative antibiotics to fit prevalent organisms, and weight-based dosing. Basically, high intensity for a short duration of time. Optimizing patients for total joint replacement is a comprehensive approach, and there are modifiable risk factors. As surgeons, and Dr. Malhotra and I were talking before, if you operate, you're going to get complications. That's the way it is. And we're never going to be able to eliminate all infections. But there are modifiable risk factors for poor clinical outcomes that we can modify before surgery. Obesity, poorly controlled diabetes, tobacco use, psychological and behavioral problems, physical deconditioning, and most equally as important, Staph aureus decolonization in the nose. It's a modifiable risk factor. And we did a study where we looked at our patients that had staph in their nose, that smoked, and were obese. And we published this 5 years ago, and there was a 5 times higher risk of infection following knee replacements. So that, when a patient comes to your office looking for a knee or hip replacement, they say, "What's the infection rate?" You can say, "Well, my infection rate's less than 1%. But that's for all your patients, it's not for that patient, right? And that patient that you're talking to is making the decision whether to have surgery based on not what your total infection rate is for 3,000 patients, but what theirs would be, what their risk. And if they're young and healthy, their infection rate's probably low. If they're older, it's higher. And if they're obese. So we think that Staph aureus decolonization is very important in decreasing infection. So we did, and it's been shown in New England Journal of Medicine in a double-blind placebo-controlled study that if you decolonize patients with McPherson versus placebo, the relative risk of infections went down 50%, which is good. So we've been doing this since 2010 at our institution. We actually did a randomized controlled study where we compared McPherson versus povidone iodine. The problem with McPherson we found is that you need to take it for 5 days before surgery, and it's expensive. So a lot of patients weren't doing it because they'd have to take it at home. But the povidone iodine, you can swab their noses right before surgery, and it's very inexpensive. So we looked at the risk of a deep SSI with the two treatments, and what we found is that it was equal. Basically, there was no difference. And actually, the povidone iodine group did a little better, but certainly povidone iodine swabs given at the time of surgery, right before surgery in the holding area in the nares, decrease infection rates and decrease colonization rates. So that's our protocol at this point. We published this as well. So this is what we're doing right now. We culture all our patients, every single one, and whether they're cultured, whether they are positive or not, they still get povidone iodine, because it's really, logistically, it's very difficult to culture a patient, figure out what their culture is, and then give them the iodine or the McPherson. So we give everyone povidone iodine. It's very safe. But the patients that are positive for methicillin-resistant staph or MRSA also get vancomycin preoperatively in the holding area in the OR. And they also get gram negative coverage as well. So this is our protocol. We've been doing it for, as I said, over 10 years now. We have over 20,000 patients, and we found that overall our positivity rate for MSSA, sensitive staph, is about 22%, and for MRSA it's about 3%. And when we looked at 20,000 patients, we published in Journal of American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons in 2016, we found that even when patients are decolonized, they still have a greater risk of infection than if they never were colonized at all. So there must be something about the hosts and their immune response and their ability to fight off infection that allows them to get colonized in the first place. We did find that our patients that were decolonized had a lower infection rate than the general public, but than general, but certainly not lower if they were never colonized at all. So, which is important. And it was cost effective. Jim Slover, he published this study. Basically, these are graphs that show that if the providone iodine is very inexpensive, it's $10. The culture itself is $10, so it's $20 a patient. And if you decrease the infection rate by 0.1%, it's cost effective. And so it's certainly in this age where we look at the value of everything we do, there is cost effectiveness as well. So we do think it's important to decolonize patients when they come in for their hip and knee replacements, especially if these patients have been institutionalized before. And then we also looked at prophylactic antibiotics, right, and customizing it, because the bionome, the infecting pathogens, are not the same in Jaipur as they are in New York City, right? So they do change with geography, and they also change by surgical site. So the amount of gram-negative infections in hip replacements is much more than it is in knee replacements. The same thing for spine, because the spine is by the perineum, so you get a lot more gram-negative infections in the spine and the hip than you do in the knee. So, which made us think, okay, maybe let's look at adding gram-negative aminoglycoside to hips and spines, and looking at the minimal inhibitory concentration for our vancomycin patients. So this is what we found. We looked at our knees. Very, very few knee replacements, about 10%, had gram-negatives. But their hips, it was 35%, so almost a third, right? So and that's a lot. So if you just give everyone a second-generation cephalosporin, you're not preventing 35% of the infections from occurring. So what we did is we decided to give gentamicin, high dose of gentamicin, to all our hip and spine patients. And we needed to have a partnership between anesthesia and infectious disease, because as you know, gentamicin, or maybe you don't know, I didn't, but it has to be weight-based, not only weight, height, age, and sex. So there's a whole normogram that has to go into this. And to calculate everyone's gentamicin dosage prior to surgery in the holding room doesn't work for efficiency. So we looked at 6 different dose ranges, and we applied each one to each patient. And this is a relatively high amount of gentamicin. And this is our study. We had over 11,000 patients. We had hip replacement, spine fusion, and knee replacement. So the hips and knees were group 1. The hips and spines were group 1. Group 2 were the knees. And what we found with this protocol was enhanced gram-negative coverage for the hips and the spine, that our infection rate decreased in the hips and spine, which was very important. In the knees as well. And this is what it looked like. So again, if you add a high dose of gentamicin just one time before surgery, you decrease your infection rate, in gram-negative infection rate in the hips and spine, which we found was very important. And so again, some of our colleagues said, well, you're giving these large amounts of aminoglycosides right before surgery. Aren't you concerned about harming kidneys or ototoxicity? Because it can affect your ability to hear as well, the function of the ear. So we looked at our first 3,000 patients. We found no increase in nephrotoxicity. There's something called the rifle criteria, which is risk and impairment, and then E stands for that you lose your kidney, that you have it extracted. So that's kidney industry. We found there was no higher increase of injury to kidneys in our study, no nephrotoxicity, no problems with the kidneys, and no problems with hearing as well, or toxicity. So it's safe and it's effective if you do it the right way. So how about vancomycin? We're giving this vancomycin, and what we found is that, again, MRSA is actively getting more and more immune and going through different evolving, right? So we're finding that the minimal inhibitory concentration of vancomycin for MRSA is increasing. So if we give everyone 1 gram of vancomycin like we used to, it's not enough for a lot of people. and it has to do with weight-based, right? So we looked at over 300 of our patients that were MRSA positive. And we looked at them and we said, we give them all 1 gram of vancomycin before surgery. How many patients are we underdosing and how many patients are we overdosing? So we found that 81% of our patients we were underdosing, looking at weight-based nomograms, and overdosing was about 20%. So if you give everyone 1 gram, you're probably giving a minority the right amount. You're giving over 80% too much, and you're giving a certain amount of people 80% too little, and you're giving a certain amount of people too much at all. So again, not everyone needs the same dosage. So we're doing weight-based dosage. Also, we looked at the estimated level at the time of incision, and if you use weight-based dosing, you're going to have enough minimal inhibitory concentration. More importantly, the estimated level of time of wound closure. So, if it takes you an hour or 2 hours, or if a revision 3 or 4 hours, you have to make sure that the vancomycin levels are high enough throughout the procedure. So we do redose after 4 hours as well. So again, to optimize antibiotic prophylaxis, this is our algorithm that we use at NYU. For knees and shoulders and elbows, we use a standard Kefsol, or second generation cephalosporin, and we'll add vancomycin weight-based if they're colonized with MRSA. For spines, we used vancomycin if they're colonized with MRSA, and hips, as well as a gram-negative agent, gentamicin high dose. And that's our standard, as well as a second generation cephalosporin. And here's our nomogram with the 6 different dosages seven different dosages back here at the bottom. So in general, just to sort of come to a conclusion here, it's all about decolonization, using adjusting your antibiotics as well to the pathogens that affect your patients, including the type of pathogens, the geographic location of the surgery, and the minimal inhibitory concentration. One size certainly doesn't fit all, but we're never going to eliminate surgical site infections. If you operate, you're going to get an infection every now and then. But I think we can go a long way to reducing them by identifying risk factors, modifying them if possible, STAPH colonization, antibiotic stewardship, and shared decision making. That a patient with a BMI of 55 and a hemoglobin A1C of 12 that's smoking, if you tell them, yeah, my infection rate's 0.75% in general, but your infection rate's 25%, then maybe they'll decide not to have the hip replacement or knee replacement. Or better yet, maybe they'll go down the road to one of your partners. So again, shared decision making is very important as well. Thank you very much.